Okay, thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to be able to take part in this panel. And I thank the entire Cook team for how they've helped me develop my project. And thank you so much, Benedict, for inviting me. Benedict is my co-director for my PhD, and I'm working as well with Professor Jean-François Stazac in the University of Geneva. So it's interdisciplinary research around women's heritage. And that's how I titled it SHERITAGE. It's sort of a cultural her story. And the question is, when we're investigating women's heritage, who are we talking about? And there are so many layers of women in the ethnographic collections, and all of these women share the commonality to be often hidden, invisible, and that's one part of my research, is to bring to light women's heritage. From a museum perspective, it's been often thought of, when I talked about women's heritage, it was often thought of as women artists in museum or women collectors. But then there are these layers of women who come, that are actresses, that come into play. They can be the women who are responsible for the entry into collection. And we had talked about this Geschenk, the gift, and a lot of times with the object biographies, it comes through women who gift it at the end to the museum, even if they had been collected years prior. There's a recent case in the Museum of Ethnography in Geneva where there's the descendant of a male missionary who operated in Central Africa in the 1900s, gave in 2022 a women figure to the museum. And then there are the women who are responsible for the collecting, so to whom collections are attributed, but do we know if they're the ones taking it? It's not about the giving, but it's more the taking. It's about the propriety. And then finally, and which is completely invisible and completely hidden, are the women to which these either pieces belonged or who were at the initiation or conception, or to whom the figures represented. So these are all these different women who are completely hidden and invisible, and that are also entangled. They're not categories that don't overlap between each other. Wait a minute. Sorry, I'm trying to make it very as short as possible, but it's an ongoing doctoral thesis that takes years. So it might take more than 5 minutes, but I'll try to be short. Just 2 quotes that are a bit anachronic and anatopic, because they're regarding Belgian Congo in the 1920s. And my research focuses on Cameroon mainly, and then as Gabon as well in the colonial era. So the first one comes from the Bulletin de l'Union des Femmes Coloniales, who says the entire social program in full development at home is asking for an adaptation in the colony, and maybe women will contribute in part to solve the so distressing question of indigenous workforce. And then the second one is from Pierre Vigny, who was Minister of the Colonies in Belgian Congo. The problem of social welfare is particularly important regarding indigenous women that we need to win over to our conceptions, because it is through women that the achievement of civilization are passed on from generation to generation. So I think these two quotes are very impactful in the sense that they show the link between the metropole and the colony, and how everything, the processes that are going on in the metropole and the colonies are entangled in a form of quantum entanglement. So the last one is a quote from Louis Verlaine, who thought about the colonizing mindset in Belgian Congo. The essential is that she gives us children, a lot of children, and our intervention towards her should not have another goal than to make her a more prolific, a better mother. All these quotes are, they've been cited from Gertrude Miana, who's a professor on cultural history and who's worked on Belgian Congo. And I thought it was a great framework to think about how the captations of heritage on women had an impact, a goal of constructing women identity both in the colony and in the metropole at the same time. So this process is a two-faced process in a way. So as far as provenance research, it's still an ongoing research that I'm doing, but this is one of the example of women, like heritage specific to women that were worn by women, and they are metal, I'd say necklaces, but then again, all these terms are very important to deconstruct. And I would say, an embodied piece, and the materiality of it is in metal. And a lot of times in the collections and inventories, you find them broken, and their materiality a test of how they've been taken. And then one part of my research was to cross-examine how they've been taken, what they show, and what the archives show about them, and the published sources. And it's this connected history that is fruitful in provenance research. Maybe I'll pass that because that takes hours. It's the summary of my research, basically. And it's three different axes at the same time. Switzerland, I'm focusing on ethnographic collections in Romandie, it's like French-speaking Switzerland. And and at the same time, what's going on in Cameroon. So the challenges that arise as far as provenance research, and I think Sebastian has highlighted this well in the atlas, is that there are a lot of times a lack of information, no information, false information, and partial information. And what is going on now in another challenge for me is that working with museum databases is that it's a dynamic moment for museums. So the databases are constantly evolving as well. When I started my research in 2021, the database I was looking at was about 16,000 objects, and entities and agencies, and now it came up to 18,000, almost. So it shows that there are so much work being done in the museum, but also that the numbers that I'm sometimes basing my research on are evolving as well, because new information comes out. The second axis is about the collections, and the challenges are about layered acquisition. So we know that in the missionary context, there are a lot of exchanges between missionaries. It's a reticular type of organization, so it could be one that has sold to another one. And so as far as these specific provenance researches are concerned, sometimes it's interesting to have cross-museum study, and it requires a lot more of archival research. There are a lot of hidden women, a lot of invisible women, so we don't know names, we don't know who they belong to, or who acquired them, when and how. And finally, as far as Cameroon, so this is the last part with the red image, there's a lack of information about a lot of the pieces that are presented, and it's the colonial legacy is a paradigmatic shift, as we've been hearing for these past panels and discussions. And there's an institutional plurality. So these are some of the challenges in mapping my research. And yeah, I think the solutions are around new ontologies, new narratives, new wordings, and reviving old stories.